This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning. But we also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 9th of August 2019, and I am 2M.
And I am GK.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines.
Before you do anything.
Yes.
Today is the second anniversary of the day that we went to the polls. And a couple of days later,
yes,
the Wakora network, not my words,
hey,
Uhuru Kenyatta's words, stole or took his election.
Wait,
victory.
So the 8th of August?
Yes. We went
2 years ago.
Yes, 2 years ago.
2017.
Is the anniversary of the election?
The election itself.
Thanks.
Now you know. The Standard. Governors panic as courts hit WAITITU.
Yeah.
Daily Nation. Love, divorce and missing golf tycoon. The Star. 4 presidents to unveil Raila's handshake baby and a new entrant.
Yes.
Controversially so. Business Daily. US celebrities test NSC with marijuana firm plan.
I love that.
Let's start with the presidents first before we get to that weed story.
Yes. The Star is trying to tell us that Raila is the host of 3 presidents.
He's the boss of bosses.
He's the boss of bosses.
King of kings, Lord of lords.
Why? Because
he's hosting his own president of his own country.
He's hosting his own president.
As well as?
as Shisekedi of DRC, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda,
Yes.
and our own Malox of
Magufuli.
Magufuli. Malox of Tanzania.
What do you say about this story? I find it very interesting that he's hosting Uhuru Kenyatta.
I don't think it's a beautiful story. Yes, and having the port of Kisumu or Kisumu port revived is a beautiful thing for trade, because I think there were about 4 or 5 ships transcending about 4 or 5 countries, but now they have restarted one ship called MV Uhuru, all right? And now this ship is expected to go across the waters of Lake Victoria, transporting goods to different capitals. I think it's a fantastic thing for trade. But I think the Star overplayed Raila's role in this thing.
But there's an obvious narrative. I mean, yesterday was Ruto's dilemma and him looking like he's on the outside. And then
true.
You're giving now Raila this winning
one
streak.
Up. Not even a 1 up, 100 up.
Exactly. But there's an obvious narrative at play here.
What do we say? We have a 3-part criteria that we used to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is this headline topical or is it speculative? Is it repetitive or is it groundbreaking?
Yeah.
And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I wish we had one for mischievous.
Yeah, it's mischievous. I mean, Raila is hosting as who?
Toss it. Love, divorce and missing golf tycoon.
Where did he go? That's why he's missing.
Conflicting stories.
Mind you, on Twitter, our Fifth Estate fans, this was their favorite headline.
I have to agree with them. I'm telling you, read that story, it feels like it's a soap opera. You're ready, you're in it, you're waiting, the suspense. It's been built up, and I'm waiting for what is going to happen next. The episode has ended on a dramatic high.
What's the wife's name?
I refrain from doing any profiling of any human
Her name
beings.
is Wairimu, but what does that have to do with it?
I don't know, but who would have thought?
No, but we can give a little bit of context. The gentleman went missing. It is said that he went to Thailand for medical reasons. But curious things happened after his disappearance. So he disappeared on the 20th of July. A couple of days later, 2 of his lawyers, who were handling 2 separate cases, get letters from him. One saying, the lawyer who was handling his divorce with his wife, I'm no longer divorcing my wife. I was being lied to. We are together. The other one, he was handling an assault case. He had tried to put on a restraining order against same wife. I love my wife. She's a good person. She would never do these things.
Right.
But his sister had tried and put a warning to the Dutch embassy asking, please find my brother. I cannot find him. I don't know.
I think we stay tuned. But in the meantime,
Toss it.
Absolutely.
Governors panic as courts hit WAITITU.
Let me tell you, I am flabbergasted by this ruling. And let me tell you...
Flabbergasted?
Yes.
Penchant for the dramatic today.
Let me read you a ruling, right, from this lady. She's called, I think, Ngenye. Let me read it for you. He is being considered morally ill because of the alleged offences, which is similar to a governor who is sick and away from office. It has happened in other counties. When a governor is ill, his deputy takes charge, assisted by the county executive officers. This sounds very much like first year law.
No, but
essay.
WAITITU is sick of corruption.
But let me tell you,
he has done.
First she sounds like a hip hop artist because she's trying to rhyme. He is ill, and therefore he probably could be morally ill. Let me put it this way. Prof has taught us three things, right? In law, there's a rule of good law, there's a rule of bad law, and there's a rule of mediocre law. Now, of the three, this is mediocre. That's a mediocre ruling. And you know what he says what we should do to mediocre law?
What?
Is ignore it.
Well, in this case, WAITITU has no choice but to
ignore it.
No, he will abide by it. Before they said he could not access the physical premise. Now he's being told he cannot actually do any
in office.
Yes. You know, we are building such a dangerous precedent in this country that a judge can sit for about 2 hours and say who can be in office and who cannot. In other words, what she is doing, she's overriding the people's will. Over 1.2 million people. That's what she's doing. Right. Next, you will see MARAGA sitting.
I have to say this. They voted in good faith in 2017 that he would do his job. Now he is not doing his job.
But says who has not been declared guilty.
But here's the thing I'm going to say. We cannot sit here and start looking at the merits or demerits of this case. The one thing I can say is we go back to the basics of the law. Yes. Innocent until proven guilty.
Fantastic.
Toss it.
Yeah.
I'm with the people of Kiambu. I'm worried about what happens to their development.
Oh, that is also true.
if no one is...
Deputy Governor Yuko.
Yes.
Business Daily, and I cannot believe we are reading this out loud. U.S. celebrities test the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
Absolutely.
With a company called
Bangi Inc. And let me tell you, it is time the Africans in this country, and there's a reason I didn't say Kenyans, Africans in this country, because sometimes we're very backward. Recently I had a minister saying, oh, we legalize Bangi over my dead body. Look.
Say the minister's name, you're scared.
It's Matiang'i. It's Matiang'i. What? I'll say it. You see, one thing, he's a law enforcer. He does not make law. Okay? But second, if countries like Lesotho, Uganda, Malawi, Zimbabwe are actually legalizing industrial hemp, which is a variety of bangi, to grow and export for medicinal and public recreational use in those countries. Why should we not?
Yeah.
Look, Uganda is I think has about 12 applications from German and Canadian farms, and they've actually transacted over $100 million in bangi, or probably over the last 1 year.
So you want to create a bangi economy?
Let's create it.
Make it part of the big four.
I feel like this is a joke, guys.
Make it part of the big four.
Let me tell you this. Should we do it? The bangi economy in Africa is said to be about $7 billion by 2022. What we're actually saying is this. Uhuru Kenyatta can wake up one day, if you're transacting bangi, and say, who wants an SGR? You want an SGR? You get an SGR. You want an SGR? You want a port? You get 3 ports in Kisumu.
Assuming that said leaders will be able to have all their faculties with them and they are not partakers of the said bangi. I feel like this is a joke.
I am very confident in Uhuru Kenyatta.
Jamaica.
Okay,
I don't know.
You want to
I have to say this. Unfortunately, today I've been vetoed. Yeah. This is the winning headline from the producer. Yes. We and the people have been vetoed. So we have a winning headline from the Daily Nation. The Business Daily. From the Business Daily. Yes. On to our next segment before it becomes too married to that one.
Yeah.
The political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria for breaking them down for you. We ask ourselves, is the cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy? I liked this one, I have to say.
Kaguta himself, the old man. All right, this is beautiful. But before I analyze it, let me describe it. Caricature of Ugandan President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and he looks high as a kite.
Hiccuping bubbles.
Yes, and he's looking at this bottle with the cork on it's the top of the wine, and he says, "You are annoyingly potent." And then the wine, the cork on the wine is Bobby himself. Bobby
His face?
Yes. but he did not write the wine. He said the name of the wine is Bobby.
Yes.
Okay, but behind him is a cellar that looks like
a cell.
A cell.
No.
Cellar.
Yeah. Ozone did good on the puns today.
Beautiful.
He did excellent on the puns.
Today, I'm sure this would be a best cartoon.
She's eaten humble pie.
It's
Today
even her screensaver.
It's her screensaver for the day. She loves it. This is her best cartoon ever. It's Ozone Cartoon of the Year for her.
She'll say this on
I say
Monday.
put it on the parking bin.
Yeah. And he was actually charged with the memory. That's what makes it so good.
Daily Nation. Also a really good cartoon, by the way, I must say.
Yes, caricature of CS Education, Magoha. And he's in a lab and he's testing test tube babies. And and we might add, wasn't he a test tube baby himself? And
an experiment.
Yes, an experiment gone well.
Still in process. Still in progress.
I think it's gone well.
We don't know what's going to happen.
From none other than Matiang'i. When Matiang'i was CS Education, I think he was the next chair.
But I have to say this, if you look at the bottom down there, you see a lot of test tubes, some broken ones, a lot of liquid spilled. And that tells you how the perception of how he's going. We don't know how this experiment is going to go.
Yeah.
He's a bit shocked by what is coming out, so he may discard it.
And to be honest, like with any change in any country, it's not going to be linear, it's going to be difficult.
Absolutely.
I think we have to execute this plan
violently.
I prefer Ozone today, I have to say. So toss this. Yeah. And finally, Gado. Yawn.
Gado is asleep.
I think Gado is still partying somewhere. But anyway, before we analyze it, let's just scrap it. Caricature, no, a drawing.
A drawing?
Of a donkey called Kenya.
It's a group of schools learning.
Yes. and he's carrying all manner of...
Pioneer failure.
Yes.
Going with your big words for the day.
Absolutely. And on top of that cargo is Okot, Kuru Okot, the head of Punguza Mzigo, and he's got a megaphone on him. And he's shouting, Punguza Mzigo, Punguza Mzigo. And he's headed towards 2022 elections. Not that funny in my view.
Not that funny. I feel like God.
But I also think
I
think it's a pun on a lot of people critiquing Punguza Mzigo to reduce its actual elements as well. So
there's a play on that. That's actually a clever one. But still, I feel like Gado should take a holiday and seek some inspiration. We want the old Gado back.
He's probably on holiday. And now, our final thought. Inspired by a book entitled Asking for a Friend, 3 centuries of advice on life. A tale of life, love, money, and other burning questions from a nation obsessed. By a lady called Jessica Weisbach.
You always struggle with these names. Forget it. They cannot pronounce yours. This week we were looking at books that are in all our shelves. Cliches, you could call them. Advice books, they definitely are.
Yeah.
On Monday we looked at The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason, a fable about how a rich man in Babylon was sharing advice on how to be wealthy and remain wealthy. And our takeaway from the book is save 10%.
Yes, did you?
I started this week. I don't know how far it will take me. Let's see. Tuesday we looked at another fable meets true story. I don't know if you can call it that. Yeah. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, about how he had one rich dad, his friend's father, who was an entrepreneur and did not believe in formal education, and a poor dad, his own father, who was Ivy League educated but didn't make that much money.
Yes.
I don't know what you take away from that, but I also note that the rich dad did not actually exist.
Yes.
So I don't know if
he was fiction.
He was fiction.
And,
so I don't know if the advice can be taken, but you take it with a pinch of salt.
And he declared bankruptcy.
Oh yes, he did after that, but it was a strategic move.
Absolutely.
Noted.
Yes.
Yeah.
On Wednesday we did How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that was looking at niceness. It was advice on niceness.
Yes.
How do you get people to like you? What are the principles that you're going to use to be pleasant, to be nice and to be good? And I don't know how far it will take you, seeing as this table is very Machiavellian.
Yes. Dale Carnegie one side, Machiavelli
the other side.
Book is sissy.
Pick that to
you
yourself.
did say that.
On Thursday, we looked at The Laws of Wealth by Daniel Crosby, how to invest in risk. He has the thesis that all of us must invest in risk, because if you are rational actor, as we all are, you come to the conclusion very, very quickly that on your salary, the salary that I'm on and you're on, we cannot have that much by the time we retire.
Yeah.
So if you want to not live on a gradually declining poverty index, then you must invest. And you must invest in the stock market, where your return is significantly higher and your depreciation rate significantly lower. Today we're looking at asking for a friend. 3 centuries of advice, life, love, money, and other burning questions from a nation obsessed.
Yes.
Why do we want to get advice? Why is it important?
And why are people obsessed?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So Jessica Weisberg wrote this book in 2018, and she offers a delightful history of America's obsession with advice from famous authors. She looks at a history of advice giving in America, and she says that the industry of self-help began from as early as the days of Plato and Socrates.
Yes.
And so Plato would write these letters on love, government, and relationships, and they would be answered by his mentor, Socrates.
Yeah.
She now says that this industry is worth about $10 billion annually. Originally targeted at baby boomers, such as Professor Mutayenguni, to now millennials. And she says that there's a perceived need for information everywhere. And it's accessible through our phones and technology. And for instance, she mentions that every year Google publishes a list of the most frequently asked questions, and they do it at the end of the year.
How will
Sometimes
I be rich?
how do you get rich?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're factual. They're asking to, the person is asking to clarify a term or a trend that's happening in their country. And sometimes it's very emotional. It's, how do I get him to like me? What do I cook on a first date? How do I get a job? All those.
Or even what do I wear?
All those kinds of
I may have to
things.
do that.
Yes.
So Weisberg takes readers on this tour of advice givers, and she puts them into 4 parts. So part 1 are who she calls old wise men. These men or women, mostly men, gave practical advice.
Yes.
The people who fall into this category are Benjamin Franklin,
a gentleman called Chesterfield. What they were was that they were white, they were male, they were pedigreed, and because they knew so much, they told us.
And people trusted them, right? And so Benjamin Franklin would say things like, diligence is the mother of good work. Or he would say, early to bed,
early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
And they were sort of like these catchy phrases that populations would really catch on and follow on from.
My personal favorite, visitors and fish stink in 3 days.
Yeah, so you better leave after 3 days. Don't be that visitor, right? And so that was the first part. And the second part, these are the advice givers who are talking as friends, and they wrote as friends, and they sort of offered up their experiences and hoped people would be empathetic. But it was also the rise of people who would write columns such as Dear Abby or Oyungapala, and so you would write your issue anonymously, and then your response would come in the paper, and people would be eager to look at them.
But also the issues were across the board. So even though you wrote your issue anonymously, the issues that they dealt with were across the board and wide-ranging.
And in this part of in this section falls people like Dale Carnegie. They sold hope, optimism, happiness, joy. And then in part 3, she calls them the experts among us. These are PhDs and actual credential holders. And so here you have your financial gurus, your psychologists who would tell you how to raise your children. But in particular, she goes into a story of a lady called S.F. Porter, who fooled a lot of people for a long time. She would write the articles, and people thought she was so clever and that she was a man.
But then she'd show up and she was a woman. What was interesting was that at that time, a lot of the experts would, if at all they fell within the wrong gender, and the wrong gender was the female gender, because there were places where women were not allowed, then they would use euphemisms, pseudonyms, or just use the initials of their name. And one time, in 1942, the editor of this Sylvia Porter decided, we must stop the ruse.
We must tell them
who
you are.
Was she the head of Treasury or something?
No. But the head of Treasury would seek advice
from her because he liked her columns, and her columns were sort of what we have today. Explanatory journalism. They'd take complex things because she was an expert, and then she'd break them down simply.
Sort of what like the Fifth Estate does.
Definitely. We're explanatory journalists. We have a bit of expertise, and then we try and break it down for you. But what happened is, after she revealed that she was a woman, a random thing happened. The New York Stock Exchange had an emergency meeting to discover, should we allow her on the floor, on the trading floor? Because at that time, the floor was strictly for men. And what they did is that they gave her honorary pants. Yes.
Imagine that.
She's one of the boys.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And then in the fourth part, she categorizes advice for all by all.
Yes.
And this is what she calls contemporary advice givers. This is the era we're living in.
Yeah.
It means that if you have technology and you have social media, you can essentially give advice beyond your family and your friends.
And I think
beyond your WhatsApp group, you can create a YouTube channel. You can decide to broadcast all sorts of things. Yes. And so she's talking about these people who aren't necessarily experts in what they do, but they have a platform and a voice. Yeah. And in fact, in Kenya, we have a lot of influencers, actually, isn't it?
Social media influencers.
Yeah, people who are being paid to speak about certain things, but yet the background...
But I also think that it also gives a platform for actual experts to give advice on the actual things that they are subject matter experts on. Yes. Yeah. And use that same platform and that accessibility that the World Wide Web, the web of things gives us.
Exactly. And in this part, the thing that I think about is someone like Donald Trump. Yeah. He writes a book called The Art of the Deal, which sells millions of copies. He's not necessarily an expert. He was strategically or not bankrupt 4 times, but it's a good example,
especially after writing that book.
Yes, and it's a good example of how you can galvanize sort of some information and pitch it and become an expert.
What is this thing you said about waking up early?
Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy and wise. I didn't say it, I'm sure your mother told you.
Yeah, I think she did. So I'll add it on top of the 10%.
Okay.
All right. But guys, my biggest takeaway from this book is how you render advice. You can either be polite, you can be brutally honest. Yeah. And then there was this guy called Lord Chesterfield, who was married to the daughter of King George I. Wow. A lady called Petronilla. If you think Petronilla was Kenyan or Kenyan name, now you know where it came from. Anyway, now this Lord Chesterfield had an illegitimate son called Philip. But because he could not raise illegitimacy, he used to send letters to the boy. All right, and that's how he grew him up. So and the letters used to be very brutal. And he told him, don't marry an ugly girl. Get 2 French ladies who one is looking nice or looks nice, and the other one is the other one you can marry. All right. But he also told something, and let me read it. He said, it's more important to be shrewd than genuine. There is no real value to be one's self. And because Lord Chesterfield was a diplomat to the Netherlands and he had married upwards, he needed to give advice that was a little bit brutal. Okay?
But also very, very self-serving.
Yes. But here is a point. This boy died even before his father. He was depressed. And maybe because of the brutal nature of advice. But again, it is because it was coming from father to son. Now, guys, there's a local example here.
Tell me.
There's a local example. Back in Kapenguria, there was a man called Jomo Kenyatta, who I'm sure you all know. And he was incarcerated with a man called Gay. But Jomo Kenyatta used to write letters to his daughter, former mayor of Nairobi. She was called Margaret Kenyatta. Margaret Wambui Kenyatta. Yeah. And this was daughters from father to daughter. Letters from father to daughter. Yeah. But one sneaky man called Paul Gay used to intercept these letters. Not daughters.
But you're giving us Paul Gay's intention.
Yes, absolutely. And Paul takes this letter and says, okay. And then he writes his own. But these letters, because they used to go all the way to Kapenguria, Jomo Kenyatta used to read them. And one time, Jomo Kenyatta approaches Paul Gay and says, I can see I'll be a father-in-law, or you'll be my son-in-law.
Was he happy about that?
It's
quickest way to get a good beating, I think, is what he discovered that did.
But guys, I mean, in all honesty, these letters from Chesterfield became published. And people were reading very personal letters, and I think the personality in them was a brutal nature of those letters. Yeah.
I have one thing I have to say. Yeah. And I'll quote from the book. It says, "Who doesn't want to believe that with hard work, determination, and a bit of advice, anything is possible?" Yeah. And that essentially is what advice givers have been peddling for the years. Yeah. And I have to say that this reminds me of a book that we have reviewed in the past. Yeah. It's called Nudge, by a guy called Richard Thaler.
Oh, yes.
And it is about choice architects. And I have to say that any advice giver, whether you are a pedigreed white man, whether you are an actual expert in the field, whether you are sitting here and saying it from your YouTube channel because now you are a self-appointed guru, you are a choice architect. I don't know, do you have a YouTube channel? Personally, I'm on TV. I'm on TV, not on YouTube. I think that we are all choice architects, and what they're doing is that they have interests that are at play and that they're making you follow them. And my best example is from the second category. You know, the second category pushed themselves, or they branded themselves as empathy people. I feel your pain, I'm just like you. In fact, what I give you is attainable, and because it's attainable, you should listen to what I say. Dear Abby and Anne Landers were two twin sisters who had the longest running columns. In fact, at one point, they had 1,600 columns being in all papers. They were everywhere you looked. They were Aunt Abby and Anne Landers. And here's the thing that happened. Over the 60-year period that these two twin sisters fought each other in their columns, a nation changed. A nation went from being polite, as you were saying, from having women not work, to having women vote, work, and to having women break glass ceilings. On the other side, moral norms also changed. They changed from having gay marriage as illegal to it being legal. They changed from saying divorce is not possible. I think Dorothy Dix, of that same era, proposed, even if your husband beats you, you'd rather have a wolf than be alone, to saying divorce is allowable. And what they were telling the people at that time is that if I can change, so can you. And that's the thing I want to tell you. Yes, anybody can give you advice. Even you can give advice. You may not be warranted, but you give it anyway, because people want advice. That's why we're a nation obsessed. But why are they giving you that advice? What is the interest at play? Do you realize that you're being acted upon? Do you realize that all of these, from George Clason to Robert Kiyosaki to Dale Carnegie to even Daniel Crosby, they are all choice architects. They're telling us what to do, how we should do it. Are we taking it? Do we realize we're being manipulated? Think on those things. This is Winning Headlines. Today we had a strange winning headline from the Business Daily, and we had a winning cartoon from Ozone of the Star with good puns. Tuan came to preach, and we were trying to stop him, but we will see. Remember that you can find Fifth Estate on your TV screen. Take a moment to look for us. We are on Star Times, GoTV, and Pan free to air. But also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great weekend. Do not be caught by the choice architect, but become one yourself. See you next week.